Greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to another episode of Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. This is episode 26. I am your host, Rick Verbanis, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Mr. Bob Lucius. Bob, what's going on?
Oh, man, it's another great day, Rick. Another great day, another great opportunity to talk about Captain America-related things. In this case, we're doing a show recap, so I'm excited about that.
Yes, and so as we've been doing every Sunday for the last 5 weeks, we have been doing our reaction show to the Falcon and Winter Soldier series, and we have each week we've had a different guest on, and we actually have a repeat guest. So coming back from the reaction to the second episode, which was the introduction of John Walker into the series, we figured we'd have Mr. Dave Witham back. Hi, Dave.
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Great. Yeah. We know that you're a huge John Walker fan. And so we wanted to have you back because, well, there's a lot that's been going on with that character in the series. And we wanted to have you on to get your take.
Great to be here. Looking forward to it. It was another great episode. I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Right. So we had a huge cliffhanger, if you will, with episode 4, right? And by the way, everybody, spoiler alert, we're talking about episode 5. So if you haven't watched episode 5, we're going to be talking about it. So just want to give you a fair advance. So at the end of 4, we had this huge cliffhanger where John Walker snapped and killed a defenseless person. I mean, obviously he was one of the Flag Smashers. He was a bad guy, some would even call a terrorist, but he was defenseless. He was down, but John killed him, and this was shown by the whole. Everybody saw this because it was in a crowd, and of course everybody had their cameras on in today's world, and that's why the title of episode 4 was "The Whole World Is Watching." And so now we have the fallout. We have the fallout of this. And so we have John Walker runs away from the scene. He goes into an abandoned warehouse. He's having a little inner monologue showing that maybe he's maybe he's lost it a little bit. He's having a strong reaction to what everything just happened. And then Sam and Bucky follow him there and try to have a conversation with him, and a fight ensues. So let's start there. And John says to Sam, I killed him because I had to. And then he goes on to say, I am Captain America. And then he tries to, in this fight, he tries to actually kill Sam and Bucky. So he wasn't like trying to hold back. I mean, he was willing to kill. What were your guys' reaction to this?
Well, I think we're kind of seeing John at his lowest ebb at this point. We've kind of seen the cracks slowly appearing throughout the show ever since episode 2, and the pressure slowly building on John, and he's finally broken. I mean, the guy is all sorts of crazy at this point. The line about having to kill the guy, you think, who am I trying to convince here? Is he trying to convince Sam and Bucky, or is he trying to convince himself? And you're right about the level of violence he uses against those guys. I think when you watch the scene, it seems to be the case that if he was against any one of them, he probably would have killed them. And it was only really the fact that there were 2 of them there, but we don't get any fatalities. Brutal fight scene. Reminded me a lot, I'm sure you're familiar with the issue, where he goes up against the watchdogs after his parents, as it was, were killed in the comic book, and he is completely unraveled, and he's kind of crazy unleashed at this point.
Yeah.
What we don't know at this point. I mean, John, he was kind of on a knife's edge. He's under a lot of pressure, right? I mean, his friend just got offed, But one thing we don't know is we don't know what the effect of this particular serum is in terms psychologically. We know what it is physically, right? Because the Flag Smashers have taken it, but they've done some crazy violent stuff as well. And that may also his reaction where he is, the stress he's under, the anxieties he has, the grief, that may have been amped up, somewhat like, the proverbial roid rage. And so that really hasn't been explored yet, that this may be a side effect of that sort of imperfect super soldier serum that's out there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. That's an interesting, take as far as how the serum is affecting him. I think that's something that they will explore later on, because I think, at some point, I mean, he's not going anywhere. Right. This character is going to be in the MCU. I think we all agree. And I don't think his story ends with the next episode. I think he's going to continue on. And I think, he's not a bad person. He's a good person who did a very bad thing. And that's a difference. Now, in some cases, when a good person does a very bad thing, they have an opportunity to come back from this by showing remorse and showing that they want to make restitution, make amends. They want to go down a different path. They've learned from their lesson. But right now, doesn't seem like John's in that mode, right? He certainly doesn't feel remorse. He keeps telling everybody that he had to do what he had to do. When he goes in the scene where he goes up in front of the commission mandate, right? And the senator is coming down on him and saying, he's being stripped of this and stripped of that. And then he yells at them. He loses his temper and he yells at them and he says, "I only did what you trained me to do. You built me." So he doesn't seem to have any remorse. Yeah. And so that's something I think that hopefully they'll explore later on, because the John Walker of the comic books, this is a different story from that, right? I mean, John Walker in the comics, he gave up his shield and uniform because he felt he couldn't live up to what Steve embodied in Captain America. He voluntarily did that because he knew Steve was the right man. And then the commission, they said, "Well, look, we can still use you. You're a valuable asset." And they made him the U.S. agent and they signed him to different things. So that's how the story went in the comics. It's a little different here, but I wonder I wonder how it's going to go. But I do see that they're going to try. I think hope maybe is the wrong word. I mean, or is the right word? Is they're going to try to have a redemption arc with him, because I'd hate for him to be a villain.
I'd absolutely agree with what you're saying. I mean, the character has a great amount of potential, and we established early on, like you said, that he is a good person, but it's clear he's done terrible things. And at the moment, he seems at the bottom of a deep, dark hole where, he can't see the mistakes he's made. All he can see is enemies all around him. But at the same time, he's not exactly 100% wrong in what he's saying. I got the feeling that scene where he killed the Flag Smasher, if that hadn't happened in public, the government probably would have been fine with it. And it's also the case that the government is throwing him under the bus because he's brought such a kind of high profile attention to what he's doing. And I mean, that scene they've basically taken away the only family he ever had, which is the military. That's what matters to him. So I have some sympathy for John as well. I mean, he has done these terrible things. I think he is trying to convince himself more than anyone else that he's not a bad guy, but at the same time, he is a bit of a victim as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was spot on, right? When he said that you made me this way. I mean, that is a literal as well as a figurative truth. I mean, and one of the curious things about, clearly when they wanted someone like John to take up the mantle of Captain America, they wanted a soldier. They wanted a perfect soldier who had been trained and who'd been experienced in combat and had demonstrated proficiency in that field of endeavor. And they got that. And they got that in spades because, let's face it, this is a guy who mission accomplishment comes first. And he's not widely experienced in a lot of other domains of life. This is what he knows. And in fact, that's what they wanted. But it turns out maybe that's not exactly what they wanted.
Right. Yeah, and I agree. And David, I think you brought up a good point about, if it wasn't on film, would he still be Captain America? And so let's talk about the scene after the commission mandate, and that's when we have Contessa Valentina show up, and it's by the actress Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I know, and I want to get Bob's take on this because I know Contessa is one of his favorite characters. We could go back and what was the thing you said about Bob? Oh yeah, something like I mean, like you. I know you're a fan of her, but and I'm saying the character, not
of course the character
Dreyfus, yeah.
Right.
So we'll get to that in a second. But she even said, Dave, no one's mad about what you did. Right. No one back there is mad about what you did. So that was telling. Right. And I think so. We agree if the whole world wasn't watching, it would be a different story, but they have to save face. So that's going to be interesting. Now, the character herself, if people aren't familiar with the comic book version of this character, so she, and Bob, I'm going to let you give her backstory, but I'll just say in a nutshell, she's a SHIELD agent, a high-ranking SHIELD agent, one-time lover of the comic book version of Nick Fury, and she's a good guy. Now, in the last 5 years, there was a Nick Spencer wrote a different version of Captain America that had to do with Hydra, and she ended up being bad in there. But that's like a real small percentage of her entire comic book history. So for the most part, she's a good character, and she works for SHIELD. Now, that said, the actress that has been playing her is more known for her comedic roles. So it was an interesting choice to pick her in this role for that reason. And also, Contessa is supposed to be a superb hand-to-hand combatant, and I don't see that. But I don't know. Hey, they said the same thing about Michael Keaton, and Batman, right? So who knows? But Bob, I know you're itching to give your thoughts on this.
Rick, I got to tell you, it was a blow because I was loving the episodes, thus far. I thought it was great. I was a little upset that John Walker still hadn't shaved before going in front of some senators and flag officers. I was a little irritated about that, but and I love the idea of the Contessa, being a character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even though she is traditionally connected with Nick Fury Sr. But I got to tell you, the casting really just took the wind out of my sails because there were so many opportunities, I think, to bring somebody new in or bring somebody with, I don't know, more chops than this. But I had a very hard time focusing on, taking this seriously. And I guess that's all I'm going to say about that.
David, do you have any thoughts on her?
I do actually. I've got a working theory on this. Now, you're probably aware that there's a suggestion there's going to be a Secret Invasion type movie or series coming from Marvel at some point in the future.
Right.
And you'll also be aware that the Contessa played a role in that, which I won't ruin for anyone who's not read the story at this point. But you'll also be aware as well that John Walker, when he spent most of his time working for his commission, had a handler by the name of Val Cooper.
Yeah, and then so when she said Val, that's the Val I was thinking was going to show up, not Contessa Valentina.
Now, I don't think they're the same person, but she was quite keen to stress the name Val. Obviously she's got this really long name. It's a bit complicated, and she was known as Val sometimes. Nick Fury would refer to as Val occasionally. But I'm wondering whether this is a way to kind of meld the two characters together. So you've got this kind of super secret agent Val Cooper, who's going around recruiting and directing superheroes, super characters for some kind of secretive and secret government agency to kind of do the kind of work that John Walker probably specializes in, rather than being Captain America. And then you've got this potential for a future story in Secret Invasion. I mean, initially I thought it was Val Cooper, but I think perhaps she's going to fill that Val Cooper role for John. She's the guy who's going to be handing the missions out.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I 100% was thinking the same thing, when I saw her. I mean, because she did say, we know about the serum. Just the best thing you can do in your life is pick up the phone when I call you. And so, yeah, she's going to be obviously assigning him to certain things. Now, in the meantime, I don't think John Walker agrees. John Walker has said many times, he said to the commission, he said to Sam and Bucky, he says, I am Captain America. So like in his mind, that's still the case. And then we see in the end credits, the bonus scene at the end, there he is hammering away, making a shield, and it's a Captain America shield, not a U.S. agent shield. So he certainly appears to be like he's going to want to give this another go. And, it's setting us up for a Sam as Captain America versus John Walker as Captain America, it appears in next episode.
Yeah, having made one of those shields out of cardboard and hot glue once, I can say you must have some absolutely mad skills to be able to make one out of metalwork like that. I mean, I don't know what we're teaching guys in the military nowadays, but I'm pretty sure that shield making isn't amongst those list of skills.
Well, I've been working on a 2-inch one here for the better part of a month, so and this is as far as I've gotten. So.
All right, there's a lot of scenes I want to get to, guys. Let's talk about the Zemo scene real quick, where he's at the Sokovia Monument and Bucky shows up. And I was a little disappointed in this scene. I'll be honest with you. I thought Zemo went out with a whimper instead of going out with a bang. And that's not the Zemo I would know from the comic books. I mean, I really like Brol and his portrayal, but I was really hoping by the end of this series that we were going to see him snap, him have a burst of anger, some manic that we see from the comics, and that never really materialized. And the fact that he just kind of was like, I mean, he appeared to be ready to die. When Bucky put the gun up, he kind of gave him a little bit of a nod, and almost, I think, was disappointed that he wasn't shot, because I think he wants to be reunited with his family. So I don't know. I thought that didn't end the way I would like to end. It kind of went out with a whimper. Now he's going to be taken to the raft, which, for those who aren't familiar, in the comics, that's a super secure facility for superpowered villains. I'm not sure. Was that the same place? Did you guys watch the Jessica Jones season 3, where at the end they took? Well, I don't want to give that away, but they took someone away to a facility, and I thought it was the raft. So I don't know if this is the first time it's been mentioned.
No, didn't they mention wasn't it in Civil War or something? They mentioned the raft. They actually had a scene there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good to know. Oh yeah. That's the one that's out in the ocean. Of course. Duh. I did think it was interesting where he said, I took the liberty for crossing out of my name in your book. So what I find interesting about that is not that Zemo took the liberty, but the fact that Bucky had his name in the book, that he felt like he had to make amends. That he was on his list of to make amends. I don't know. What did you guys think of that whole scene?
Well, I liked it, Rick. I mean, I understand exactly where you're coming from, because that's not the Baron Zemo that we know and love, or fear. But I like the way the Brule has played Zemo as a sort of a worldly, sort of a guy who knows what it is to be a soldier. He knows what it is to be a spy. He knows what it is to be a politician. He's got sort of everything, and an underworld sort of leader. He's got all these skills, and he's very smooth and suave. And I think, maybe it's a time thing, right? I mean, they've got to like wrap up that loose end before they move on to sort of the bigger fish to fry. And they did it in a way that sort of preserves that character for future use, which I absolutely hope we see him again, because I think that character was interesting and engaging and entertaining. And so, yeah.
I think I'm inclined to agree with you, Rick. I mean, Zemo's entire reason for being since Civil War has been to stop these super soldiers, to stop superhumans. And the idea of him just kind of accepting his fate doesn't really sit comfortable with me. I would have expected a bit more of a pushback from him. His mission isn't complete. It's the only reason, his only reason to live at the moment. So no, it didn't sit well with me. I mean, the actor's great. We're clearly going to be seeing him again. I think he's played the role magnificently. I just didn't particularly like that scene.
All right, so let's bring it up to our predictions, because I know we had a few back in after episode 2. We talked about a few, and so one of the things. Well, we'll talk about our predictions in just a second. We'll be right after this break. All right. I know I had thrown out there that maybe Zemo is playing both ends here, and he's also the power broker. And I kind of said that it was a long shot. I still think it's a long shot. But in episode, I think it was at episode 3, we had John Waller-Sewell on, and he threw out that maybe it is Arnim Zola as the power broker. And I got to tell you, when he said that, I was like, wow, that's a great one. I didn't think of that, totally out of left field. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more I love it. And the more and more I think it actually is Arnim Zola. And I will tell you why. So I know they're kind of hinting that it's maybe Sharon Carter, right? And quite frankly, the one little scene that she had in episode 5, she's on the phone, she's talking with Batroc, the Lipa, right? And she's saying, look, if you'd be rotting away in that Algerian prison if it wasn't for me, which I think maybe is that something that happened after Winter Soldier in that scene? Is that where he went? I'm not sure. But then she says you'll pay Batroc double this time, which leads you to believe that there was a previous time. And was it that, the one in the beginning of the series? That's who knows. So obviously it's showing her as a bad person, right? Because she's working with Batroc. Batroc shows up towards the end with the Flag Smashers, and he says, look, I'm not here part of your movement. I'm only here to kill the Falcon. He has weapons. So at this point, we're all led to believe Sharon is working on the bad side. Now, here's what I'm thinking. She's double agent, right? She's playing both sides. She's deep undercover in Madripoor. And she's trying to do what she can to help out, but she also, quote unquote, works for the power broker. Because if she didn't work for if she wasn't working both sides, then what is her motive in episode 3 of helping Sam and Bucky and even Zemo find the place where the scientist is making the serum? And why is she there helping them? Killing off the mercenaries that are after them. What is she? In my mind, she's doing it because she really is a good person, and she's trying to do this on the sly and blame them. But at the same time, she's playing both sides. So Arnim Zola. Now, Arnim Zola, for everybody who might not remember, but in the movies, in Winter Soldier, Civil War, it appeared that he was in the electronics, right? He was part of Hydra, and he was now no longer the person from World War II, which we all saw in First Avenger, the scientist that worked with Red Skull, but now he was this electronic being. And so, number one, there's a tie to Captain America and all that. Number one. Number two, He was the person who experimented on Bucky and made him a super soldier, right? Bucky wasn't turned into a super soldier through the Winter Soldier process, according to the movies, right? When Cap went and found him, he was experimented on, and he found him on the table of Arnim Zola, and so that soldier serum that Zola gave him was what really helped him survive that fall from the train. Okay, so Zola has a connection there. And then number 3, at the end of this episode, we see in New York City there's the vote for the Patch Act, right? And the all those people are in the inner sanctum, and they're all talking, but then all of a sudden the screens go all crazy. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we start up with episode 6 and all of a sudden on the screens we have Arnim Zola. What do you guys think?
I think it's a good theory. It works. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm still tempted to think Zemo for a couple of reasons. One is we know Zemo is an arch manipulator, and what better way to complete his goal of getting rid of the superheroes, getting rid of super soldiers, than manipulating Captain America to publicly murder someone. But another thing, and it's something I noticed from one of the early trailers. I can't remember which trailer it was, but there's a scene where Zemo, with his mask on, seems to jump down from what looks like quite a height, and he lands with ease. And when I saw that, I was thinking super soldier.
That is interesting. I mean, we don't know. He's on his way to the raft, but we don't know if he makes it to the raft. And we're led to believe that his escort was able to beat down Bucky and Falcon and John Walker and Lamar on the first go around, but we don't know what might happen en route to the raft. So there might be something there. As for Arnim, I think that's an elegant theory, and it would make up for me. It would make up for Elaine playing the Contessa. If I saw that in the opening scenes of the finale, that would be great. I don't know.
The fact that you
just awesome.
The fact that thank you. The fact that you just referred to her as Elaine. You know what popped into my head is from Seinfeld. The famous episode where she's dancing and she has a horrible dance. Yes. I can imagine. Listen, hey, meme makers out there, if you haven't already done so, I am sure you could do an Elaine dancing video right next to Zemo dancing, and have the two of them next to each other and have some sort of dance off or something, right? Wouldn't that be perfect?
Oh, I'm looking for that one, Rick. Yeah, I'm looking for
that. Okay. Well, that was my prediction. All right. So let's get to a really emotional scene. Now that the name of this episode was called Truth. And for the comic book fans out there, you probably might recognize that Truth was a miniseries that was done, I can't remember what year, but it was the story of Isaiah Bradley. And so it was the story of taking place of what happened back then, and how they tried to reinvent the soldier serum that after Steve had passed, and they used African American soldiers to experiment on, and it was a very hard hitting story, and I highly recommend anyone out there to, if you can, find the story and read it, because it's very poignant, and it's a great addition to the Captain America mythos. That said, the scene in this episode where Isaiah and Sam are sitting and talking, I mean, that was just an emotionally powerful scene, and so well done. I can't remember the name of the actor who does Isaiah Bradley, but he was just amazing, and talking about what happened, and Sam, I guess listening and finally taking this in. But it ended with Isaiah saying to Sam, they'll never let a black man be Captain America. And that's strong enough as it is. But then he says, and even if they did, no self-respecting black man would want to be. And so that was a heavy hitting scene that stuck with Sam as he questioned, because he'd been questioning that. So what did you guys think of that scene?
Well, I mean, Sam's clearly very torn. And he's not just torn between Isaiah and what he thinks. He's torn between what Steve wanted for him, and he's torn between what Bucky has been after for the entire season. Going back to the scene just after the fight with John Walker, there's a bit at the end where Bucky kind of throws the shield down at Sam's feet. And he's kind of doing it in a way which is saying, this is yours. Take responsibility for what was betrothed to you. So he's going to have to weigh up all of these different sides. He's got people telling him he can't do it, people telling him he shouldn't do it, people telling him he should do it. And at the moment, I think the one person whose feelings we're not really sure about are Sam's.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. I've as Rick knows and needles me about, I follow some other groups, and one particular group I follow is the Black Superheroes group, Black Superheroes Forever group, and I've been sort of following conversations around that particular scene, and man, it has resonated so deeply with so many people, as has just Isaiah being in this series. And just sort of the desire to see more of Isaiah and to hear more about the backstory and to maybe see that explored. But Isaiah is a very different person from a different time in American history than Sam. And not to say that things are completely different now for Sam and his experience, but Sam has to reconcile who he is and what his own experiences and his own truth with Isaiah's and with his family and with his friends and with what his background has been. And he's still sort of navigating that in his head, I think. And I think obviously we're going to see that come to fruition in one way or the other in this final episode.
Yeah. And I thought it was another emotional scene that ties in with that was when Sam and Bucky were back at in New Orleans and tossing the shield around. And Sam says to Bucky, the legacy of that shield is complicated, to say the least. And I thought it was great because Bucky says, when Steve told me what he was planning to do, neither one of us really understood what it felt like for a black man to be handed that shield. I owe you an apology. And that was, I thought, really poignant on a couple of levels. One, I mean, he finally gets it, and understands, or at least empathizes, and is trying to, and it makes an apology to Sam, which I think is very big of him. But then the other little nugget there was when Steve told me what he was planning to do with the shield. So at the end of Endgame, when we see the older Steve sitting on the bench, I had always wondered why Bucky just kind of looked at Sam and just nodded and said, "Yeah, why don't you go over and talk to him?" Well, apparently Steve and Bucky had already talked about Steve's intention to give the shield over. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, well, we knew that, he said goodbye to Steve, and he knew this was goodbye before Steve took the stones back in time. So clearly they did have that conversation about what Steve's future would be. But you're right. I mean, that was just that whole dialogue, and again, Sam isn't Isaiah, and Sam isn't Steve, and Sam isn't Bucky. Sam is Sam, and Sam's got to figure out what's important to him and what he stands for, and what he wants to achieve, either as the Falcon or as the next Captain America.
Yeah, I mean, the whole episode, probably as big a theme as anything, was the theme of reconciliation between Sam and Bucky. And at the beginning, just before the fight with John Walker, it doesn't even look like Sam really wants to try and take the shield back from John. I mean, Bucky clearly does, but Sam seems somewhat reticent to do so. And then we have the scene with the repairing the ship and all of that, and that's almost a metaphor for the repairing of Sam and Bucky's relationship. They've had a lot of stresses between the two of them so far in this season, and we've gone from the beginning of the show, or the beginning of this episode, where I'm not even sure if we're on the same page to the end where, these are the kind of superhero buddies we kind of know and love. So there's a whole journey in that one episode for Sam and Bucky. And I think everyone else has decided where they stand. And we get to the end of this episode, and I think it's really about Sam deciding about who he wants to be. Where does he stand? What does he think?
So kind of following up on that scene, one of the things that I liked about it too was when Sam, said, "Hey, Bucky, are you? Can you handle some tough love?" And because he did say, he said, Steve is gone, and it doesn't matter what he thought, and you have to stop looking to others for what you think. And so he mentioned, you got to do the work, which he's referring to, I guess, the 12 steps, and you got to work the steps and make amends, and not just apologize, but really be of service and give closure. Now, of course, we all thought of, the person in the very first episode of the father of the son that was killed. And so, we're going to come full circle, right? I think that's where Bucky's story is, started. That's where it's going to end. And we're going to see the growth of Bucky's character there. So that's, I thought that was, just setting that up. We all kind of expected that was going to happen, right? Like you don't just introduce that father and let it go and never come back to it. But now it's almost like, hey, Bucky, it's in your face. This is actually something you need to do.
No, I was here. Absolutely. I think that is definitely where the circle closes for Bucky, and it needs to close. And I love that, that sort of interchange between him and Sam, where, he talked about what closure means, and what it means is, more than just crossing somebody's name off your list. And it means to sort of help fill that hole in some way, not only in that other person, but in yourself. And I mean, that's some beautiful writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I like so much about that scene is not so much for specifics of the scene, and you're both right in what you're saying about that scene. But what Sam said was a very Captain America thing to say. Now, I mean, he's not actually played, when you think about it, that big a role in the previous movies. He's not had that many talking parts. He's always been stood somewhere in the background with Steve Rogers in the front. And throughout this entire series, we've seen quite a few of these scenes, a few of these monologues, and they remind me very much of Steve Rogers, or rather, they remind me of Captain America. Mm-hmm. So I think while Sam isn't quite there yet, I think we really are seeing Captain America in the making here.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's as far as him being more of that Captain America in trying to help people, because that's been his MO throughout this series. Is he's been trying to talk to people. He isn't always action first. I also thought it was interesting in that scene where Bucky kind of further explained what it meant to him about that shield, right? He said, the shield's the closest thing I have to family. He says he felt like he had nothing left, and then he was questioning everything. So that was a deeper insight into Bucky, and really another reason why he's been hung up on that shield all along.
Yeah, and there was actually a point where he kind of, I can't recall precisely. He looked at it and picked it up, and sort of, he had a certain longing look in his eyes at that shield. And at first I thought, well, I think he'd like to just take that shield himself and take up the mantle. But I think, in light of that subsequent comment by him, that's in fact, that's all he has left from his past, right? I mean, who he was with Steve. I mean, that's it. It's more than just a symbol of the American dream for him. It's a symbol of family and belonging.
Yeah. It's a touching thing too. All right. So, I already mentioned some of the things that I thought were going to get tied up. I think, for those who read the comics, that Joaquin Torres in the comics becomes the Falcon when Sam becomes Captain America. And certainly it seems like in this episode where Sam leaves his wings with him. right? They're damaged, and he turns and says, "Keep them." And so we could totally see that Joaquin Torres is going to probably take them, fix them up, and take on a role as Falcon at some point later in the MCU. So that would be something to look forward to. Some other things I think, wrapping up. I mean, obviously, when Bucky said to Io, "Hey, I got one more favor to ask," right, from the Wakandians, and then he shows up with the case with Sam, and then at the very end, Sam opens up the case, and I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of like, I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see the wings and the costume. I say costume, the uniform, and so looking forward to seeing that. So I think we're going to get some things full circle, right? I think we're going to get Bucky making amends to the father. I think we're going to see Sam as Captain America taking on Batroc and John Walker. I think we're going to see, obviously, we're going to find out who the power broker is, and we're going to find out what Sharon's involvement with all that. What else? I gave my prediction on who the power broker is and how that's all going to play out. What do you guys have? Dave, tell us a prediction that you might have.
I think we're going to see the beginnings of a John Walker redemption. Much like in the story which the series is largely based off, we have in that case, it was Steve Rogers against John Walker. And those two are going at it. But right at the end, right when it really matters, John once more shows the kind of person he is. And he saves, in that case, Steve Rogers from the Red Skull, as it was. I sincerely hope we get to see that, because I think you're right in what you said earlier on. Here is a character who's going to have some legs in the Marvel Universe. We're going to see him again in some way, shape, or form. I just hope he comes out of a series a good guy. He's taken a lot of flack this season, a lot of fan criticism. There's a lot of people out there who don't like him, and in some cases that's justified. So I just hope there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for him, and I think we might see it at the end of the last episode.
Bob?
Yeah, I agree. I just dovetail on that. I think that's true, and I quite honestly, from a marketing perspective, I think Marvel owes that, because you can't leave a story with an unhinged Congressional Medal of Honor, 3-time Medal of Honor winner, as a crazy lunatic, racked with post-traumatic stress disorder and violent tendencies. That's not a good way to end that story. So I think just from a practical marketing perspective, we're definitely going to see a redemption in John Walker, and it may not complete that circle in that final episode, but we're going to see the beginning of it. But my other big prediction is, I think in one of the final scenes of this show, we're going to see Bucky and Falcon get into a car, and we're going to see one of them move the seat up without being asked.
Oh, man. You just made my heart pitter patter. I hope we see that.
We're going to see it. That's the unspoken, the unspokenness of the relationship.
And we're all holding out hope, right? We're all holding out hope that we get to see an old Steve, that he makes a cameo somehow, some way. That I know Sam said it in this last episode. He said, Steve is gone. But I think we're all still holding out hope, right?
Even if he's just sitting in his bungalow on the beach, watching it on TV unfold in New York City or wherever the finale is going to take place, or read it in the newspaper and with a smile on his face, that would be golden.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I think we covered so much in this episode. So I can't wait for the next one. I think it's going to be bittersweet, because I don't want the series to be over. They haven't announced a season 2 yet. So I'm not ready for this to be done. So I kind of can't wait for next week, but I kind of want to put it off. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a great show. It's I don't know what I'm going to be doing with my evenings once it's done.
But they've got this. I really got to give them credit because they do seem to have this sort of scheduled out. With I think
Loki.
Black Widow's coming out soon, right? Yeah, is she still scheduled for May?
Well, yeah, but that's a movie. But Loki will have an ongoing series starting in June.
But May for Black Widow, and then June for Loki, and then they've
Black Widow's July.
Oh, is it July? Okay,
yeah.
I thought it was May.
So I think it was May last year.
Oh,
yeah. And then they moved it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at least they're dribbling stuff out for us for the next few years, so which is good, which is nice.
Yep.
All right. Maybe they'll leave us hanging with a post-credit scene to episode 6, which perhaps points us in the direction of what comes next for Sam and Bucky and John and all the other people involved.
Wouldn't that be good?
I'd be very surprised if we don't see something which is going to keep us hanging on for what comes next.
Yeah.
Well, until that time, then. All right. Well, thanks, Dave. We appreciate you jumping on. We'll see you on the Facebook page.
Thanks a lot, guys. Great to be here again.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Bob and I are going to wrap this up. So we're going to stay on the line and finish up the recording. So I'll have this up. It takes a couple of hours. It's going to take me an hour to edit it, and then it takes a couple of hours for it to kind of make it up onto the podcast. But once I get it promoted, I'll be sure to tag you on that, Dave. So thanks for coming on as a guest.
I'll be fast asleep by then. It's past my bedtime. It's 10 p.m. here in the UK, and
that's right.
I've got to be up at 5.
Ooh, all right. Well then, thank you. We appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Anytime. Thanks a lot.
Take care, brother.
See you now. Bye-bye.
All right, so we need to talk about the next episode, which is going to be the intro of Baron Zemo, and that's it. All right. All right. Well, that was a great conversation with Mr. Dave Witham. And Dave's got his own Facebook group out there for John Walker fans. You should check that out. It's called U.S. Agent, Part Cop, Part Soldier, All Hero. And you can join that group if you want to talk more about John Walker, especially in the comics. And speaking of the Facebook page, you can always reach out to us on there. And by the way, we are always appreciate any 5-star reviews. If you go on Apple and you can leave us a review on there, we appreciate it. And maybe we'll mention it here on the next episode. So, and speaking of next episode, we are coming back every Wednesday with a new episode when we talk about various Captain America comic books. So if you've been enjoying the Falcon and Winter Soldier Disney Plus series, you may want to check out the comic book. They had a 5-issue miniseries that came out in 2020 and finished up early this year in 2021, and it's called the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it was a 5-issue miniseries. And Bob and I are going to be covering that in our next episode, which comes out this Wednesday, episode 27. So if you want to get the comic version, continue the buddy good feel good story, there's a lot going on, a lot of action, a lot of humor. It's a real cool miniseries. So we're going to cover that in next episode, number 27. All right. Well, as always, Bob, it's been fun wrapping cap with you.
Indeed. It was a great opportunity to talk to Dave again. He knows so much about John Walker. It's always great to pick his brain a little bit and get his sort of unique perspective on where that character's going. And it's just so much fun talking about that show, Rick. So thanks for let's do this again.
One more time, at least. All right. He's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis, and you've been listening to the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. Thank you.